Hey y'all, it's Ashley Bookishrealm and I'm back with another video. Today, as you can see from the title, we are here to talk about my top books of 2021. I have been itching to do this video. It is finally here. I'm happy that it is finally going live. It has been a difficult journey making this list. I read 382 books last year, and to go through all of those books and determine what my top books would be was extremely difficult because I did end up reading a lot of great things last year. I did not put these books in any type of order. They're not in order at all. I could not do I think there's 25 books. I couldn't do 25 and then up to the number one pick this year. It was just too difficult. It would have taken me too much time. So these are not in any particular order at all. I may try to do that this year and kind of bracket it a little bit for my own personal notes and then see which one would come out on the top. But for this year, I was just we're just gonna list them out and kind of go with it. So there's 25 books, no particular order. It's a variety of genres that are going to be represented in this. So I'm happy that it is kind of a wide variety of things. There's graphic novels, there's comics, there's nonfiction, there's even some fantasy in here. I'm happy that I did have a wide variety of favorites for 2021. But anyway, if you're new to my channel, make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button, click the bell for notifications so you never miss a video, and go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. All right, y'all, so before we get started with the video, I want to talk a little bit about Book of the Month. So thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. If you didn't know, Book of the Month is a super popular and fast-growing online book service for all readers. Their mission is to promote new and emerging authors to help readers find books that they'll end up loving. So the way that it works is that the team spends an entire month vetting through hundreds of books to come up with a specially curated list of new and early release titles. That way readers can spend more time reading and less time researching, which is great for a lot of people like me who are, you need some time to read when your schedule is already tight. So I really appreciate things like that. Another thing that I do love about Book of the Month is that they provide a wide variety of authors to choose from, as well as different genres. So there's a little bit of something for everybody. If you like fantasy, you like sci-fi, you like nonfiction, you like historical fiction, there's something for you to choose from. Another great thing about Book of the Month is they have a skip policy, so they're completely risk-free. If you go to make your selections and there's not something that you want in that particular month, you can skip that month and you won't be charged for it. On top of this, they have the best prices for newly released hardcovers. If you're anything like me, you're usually balling on a budget, right? Balling on a budget. So, newly released hardcovers, especially adult newly released hardcovers, can go all the way up to 30 plus per book. Well, I can't afford that, but Book of the Month has really great prices for their hardcovers, and today you can get your first book for $9.99 by using the code Bookishrealm. I will be sure to leave the link to Book of the Month and that code down in the description box below for you to check out. All right, so let's go ahead and check out the picks for January. Every month your books are going to come in this blue Book of the Month box, and they also send you a lovely bookmark with the best quotes. This one on the back says "Put me in, coach," which you get it, you put the bookmark. These are always really, really cool. I love the bookmarks that they do send. The first one that I see for this month is Fiona and Jane, and this is about two women who grow up together as teens and have a really, really close friendship. One of them ends up moving to New York and the other ends up staying in their hometown of Los Angeles, and basically this novel explores their friendship as it begins to kind of be strained and deteriorate a little bit because of the distance. And it is just simply about the complexity of female friendship and how their friendship is, often a beacon of home, and it's that safe space, it's a comfort space, but also a place where they're reminded of everything that they have lost throughout their years. And I believe that this book just travels across the time period of their lives. So if you're interested in complex female friendships, this will be a book to definitely check out. The next one that I have appears to be a contemporary romance, and this is Love and Other Disasters. It is about these two characters, Dahlia and London, and Dahlia has recently gotten divorced, but she gets the opportunity to appear on this cooking show, and all she needs to do is focus, but she keeps getting caught up in the competition who happens to be London. So London just came out as non-binary, and they are interested in using this cooking show as a way to make money for the queer community. So I'm guessing that the two characters end up falling in love through the cooking show, which I absolutely love. If you know me, I love food. I'm a foodie, so I like any books that include food, particularly romances that include food. So I'm excited to pick this one up. The next one that I have here is the Magnolia Palace, and this one, it sounds really interesting, almost like it's a cross between possibly being like a mystery thriller and historical fiction. This is about it takes place in kind of like two different parts. The first part focuses on a character by the name of Lillian, who ends up being a model for like different artists across New York City, and she ends up losing her mother to the Spanish flu in 1919, and then she ends up just becoming extremely depressed. The work dries up, so she ends up going to what is called the Frick Mansion, and she works as a secretary for the heiress of the family. And while she's there, she gets caught up in a lot of family secrets and webs. And then the book shifts to 50 years later, where there's another young woman who ends up being a model, and she is supposed to be working at what used to be the Frick Mansion. It's now a museum, and she ends up meeting this guy by the name of Joshua, and they get dismissed from this Vogue photo shoot, and that's when they find all these secrets that exist from the Frick Mansion. So I'm interested in reading this one because I wonder if it's going to go back and forth in terms of like time. I like when secrets are revealed when time is used as a catalyst for the plot. The next one that I have here is Reckless Girls, and this is about a group of individuals, 6 friends, who end up going to this recluse island, and while they're there, somebody ends up dead, somebody ends up missing, and they didn't realize that the island is as cut off from civilization as it is. So they begin to panic, and they realize when those two individuals, the one that ended up dead and the one that goes missing, when they realize that there is something that's strange about the island, they kind of set out to figure out exactly what that is. This is probably one of those thrillers that it's kind of like almost probably a whodunit type of situation, but I am excited to pick it up, and the cover is absolutely gorgeous. The last one that I have is one that I'm really excited to read because I've heard great things about it, and I have Jamaican heritage. My father is Jamaican, so to see a book that is titled Black Cake means a whole lot to me personally. But this story is about a mother who leaves an inheritance for 2 children, and it is a long-winded recipe for black cake. And in giving this recording of the recipe, she tells them the complex history of herself, and they have to put the pieces of the puzzle together, and she leaves them with the task to give or share the black cake when the time is right. So I'm really excited to pick this one up, like really excited for this one. So I'm happy that it was in this month's picks. So the next thing that I have to show you is a book of the month add-on. So what you can do, and which is really cool, is that in addition to your monthly selection, book of the month does offer add-ons. This is not a main selection for the month of January, but if you're a new member, you can select it as your main selection, and if you're an existing member, you could select this one as an add-on. And it is the Made by Nita Prose. So this is about a young woman who lacks social skills and has a very difficult time kind of navigating or reading the intentions of others. Her grandmother used to help her with that, and then her grandmother ends up passing away, and she has to kind of decode the world by herself, and she struggles with it. She works as a maid in this hotel, and everything is going well until she enters the room of one of the guests, and she finds him dead. And because of her social awkwardness and her inability to pick up on certain cues, the police automatically suspect her as the person who killed the guest, but she ends up having a group of friends that she didn't even realize that she had help her try to put the pieces of the puzzle together in order to solve this mystery. All right, y'all, so as I said before, the code for this month is Bookishrealm, and that, and along with the link to Book of the Month, will be down in the description box below. Thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video, and I hope you all find possibly like one book that you'll end up enjoying for the month of January. All right, y'all, so let's go ahead and jump into these books. I'm so excited to be revealing my top books of 2021. I've probably said that enough at this point, but really I'm super excited. I think this is probably one of my favorite videos to make every single year, either at the end of the year or the beginning of the next year. And so yes, I'm excited. I'm really excited. Okay, so the first book that is on my top books of 2021 is Drops of God volume number 4. So honestly, because this is volume 4 in the series, I really can't tell you much about it. I started reading Drops of God, I believe, in 2020 and continued the series into 2021, and I think I got up to volume 5 last year. There's like 30 volumes. I need to pick it back up. It's available on Comixology, and I definitely need to read more of the series this year, but it focuses on this young man who has a father who is very, very well known for his ability to make wine and to be very, critical of types of wine that are made and being able to smell and taste wine and know exactly what it is. His father is just super gifted, and he does not have the same skill set as his father, or he chooses not to go down the same path as his father. He does end up having some pretty unique skill sets, but he doesn't want to do what his father has done, and it's really, really good. It's almost like it's 2 stories within one, because when his father passes away, he ends up challenging his son and this other random guy to this competition to inherit all of the wine and the estate, and they have to find the drops of God, the specific wines that his father has left henceforth. So not only are we getting that kind of plot, but we're also getting this kind of subplot with some things that are happening at this guy's job and some wine competitions that he's doing there. Like, I did not think that a manga about wine would be so interesting, but it's the twists and turns and the crazy like plot lines that are in this book. It's so good, and volume 4 stood out to me for a number of reasons, particularly probably like the last 5 or 6 panels in volume number 4 were just chef's kiss. I was blown away. I didn't see it coming. I was like, oh my gosh. And then I don't know why I didn't read any more of the series in the second half of 2021, because I was so consumed with so many other things. But I love this. I love this volume. I love this series. If you've never heard of Drops of God, I implore you, please definitely check it out. The next one that I have is another graphic work, and it's George Takei's They Call This Enemy, and this is so good. I have spoken so highly of this. This is definitely one of my favorite nonfiction graphic memoirs of all time, which says a lot because Persepolis is definitely up there as my #1 favorite. And I read They Call This Enemy and really enjoyed George Takei's story about growing up in a Japanese internment camp, and how he talks about this polarizing attitude that I think the United States really has, or US citizens really has, about trying to paint people in positions of power as being almost godlike, where we forget that they're human beings and they make incorrect decisions or they make mistakes. And in this case, of course, we're talking about FDR being president, and how this is the same individual that is often hailed for making such great decisions about the Great Depression. Although I personally have some thoughts about that, considering some of the things that he set up had a lack of benefit for people of color, specifically Black people. But anyway, he's most hailed for the work that he did during the Great Depression, but this is also the same president that signed an executive order that allowed lots of Japanese Americans to be taken from their home and thrown into internment camps. They were stripped of everything that they owned, their houses, all materials, and then when they were released, they had nothing to go back to. So it is extremely difficult to really look at something like this and realize that, the US can paint itself as picture perfect all at once, but we also have some dark corners of our past that we don't really actively talk about. Like, Japanese internment camps are not taught a lot in history classes in secondary school, or they're completely not talked about at all. So we often talk about, what Germany did with, the Jewish community in concentration camps, but we will glaze over what we did to the Japanese American community in the internment camps that we had on US soil. This covers all of that and more, and explicit details about his experience being young, growing up in an internment camp, and how his parents even processed being in an internment camp and what it did to his parents. But it's absolutely marvelous. If you've never read They Call This Enemy, I highly recommend picking it up. I mean, is anyone surprised? Is anyone surprised that this is on this list? Is anyone surprised? I don't even have to say anything about Amari and the Night Brothers by Baby Alston. This is one of the best middle grade fantasy books that I have ever read. It is so thorough. It has so many twists and turns. It's so well written. It is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book. I absolutely fell in love with it from the moment that I read it. I'm so excited that the second book is coming out this year in April, I believe. I think it's still April unless it got pushed back again, but I feel like it got pushed back to April. But I'm so excited for that. I'm not gonna even say anything about this book because this book speaks for itself, and y'all know all about Amari and the Night Brothers. But if you don't know anything about it, you need to read. I will shove it down anybody's throat. I've been shoving it down people's throats. Somebody asked me like maybe a few months ago, you know, what's something else I should read? I'm looking for more like a middle grade fantasy, and I was like, have you read Amari and the Night Brothers? They were like, no. Well, of course you should read Amari and the Night Brothers. So yeah, one of the best middle grade fantasies I've ever read, not just this year, but in my life. Okay, so the next one that I have on this list is Let Me Free by Alexandria House. This is the fourth and final book in the McLean Brothers series. This one features the final brother, Neil. I think that it is best if you read these books in order, and the reason why I say that is that when you read these books in order, you see Neil pop up in the first three books, and Neil is often characterized as one of the brothers that you really can't depend upon, you really can't trust. He has a lot of issues and a lot of problems, and what is really good about this book and what I truly did enjoy about this book is that he kind of gets his redemption arc in it, and you understand why he made the decisions that he made and how it impacted his family, but you also get to see him grow as a character, and I really appreciate that. And then Neil, oh my gosh. So before reading this book, everybody knew I absolutely love Big South, who is the hero that we meet in the first book. And then I met Neil, and Big South had to kind of like move to the side because Neil just is the epitome of what I would want to see in a black man and his reverence for a black woman. And I have so many different thoughts about how black women are treated in this country and how we are treated even by black men. One of the things that I absolutely love about Neil is his ability to just revere Sage. Like, he is in love with black women. He has the utmost respect for black women, and I admire that, and I love it. And just the dialogue in the book is beautiful, and it is a marriage of convenience because Sage is about to get deported, and then they marry to keep her from getting deported, and they fall in love. And just Neil is everything, y'all. Neil is life. I absolutely love this man. He's just fascinating. He's great. He's just full of so much love and passion, and I adore him. And that's why this ended up being one of my favorites, because I fell in love with this man. And unfortunately, you know, I still take Big South as a side piece, but Neil definitely has my heart. The next one that I have on my list is Ace, What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen. This is one that I absolutely just fell in love with this year. It is a nonfiction book that I listened to on audio via Libby from my library, and I just picked it up on a whim because I just wanted to know and understand a little bit more about asexuality. And what I didn't expect to happen was this book taught me quite a lot about my own life and my own perception of sex and desire, and how it impacts different communities, how being asexual affects men, how it affects the disabled community, how it affects people of color, and what it means to like have the sexual desire for someone as opposed to having like sexual urges or needing a sexual release, and how those things are different, and learning more about what it means to be like demisexual. And it's just, this book was personally impactful for me, and it gave me great insight to what asexuality means and the wide spectrum of asexuality. I think we talk about the wide spectrum of asexuality a lot, or the broad spectrum of it, but I feel like Angela Chen really digs deep and dives down into so many different components of it, and how it does impact various communities and what it means for various communities to be asexual. And I think that one of the things that I enjoyed is she does talk about like how certain groups, racial groups, and I definitely believe this for like black women, how they're hypersexualized and how that impacts them when it comes to possibly being asexual. This is one one, like I said, that I listened to in audio, but it's one that I want to go back and listen to again and definitely annotate it because it is well worth a second read. It is well worth a second read, and oh, it was just fabulous. It was just so fabulous. I cannot wait to read this book again. The next one that I have on my list is Take a Hint, Dani Brown. So this is the second book in the Brown Sister series by Talia Hibbert. I did end up reading Get a Life, Chloe Brown, I think in 2020. Maybe I read it in 2020. No, I think I read it in 2020. And then I ended up reading Take a Hint, Dani Brown in 2021. And this, so far, I have not read the final book in the series, but so far this is my favorite. And what I loved about Take a Hint, Dani Brown is the fact that we have two characters who start off with fake dating. They end up being friends with benefits, and then it expands into this entire relationship. And while I don't like Talia Hibbert's writing as much as I like some other romance writers, like their writing style, I think that her character development is really, really good. And we see that here with Dani and Zaf. And like, Zaf is just an excellent hero. Dani is very hyper focused on her job and her career, and she doesn't want to make time for a relationship. But I think that Zaf shows her that she is worthy of true love and of a true relationship. And watching their relationship kind of evolve and grow was really, really great. I just think the chemistry between them was awesome. I think that the way that Zaf supported Dani as a character was amazing. There was great representation in terms of mental health. Zaf has anxiety, and then I also love that in this book we see that Talia Hibbert is definitely able to write a great secondary cast where we see family members from both sides who are really, really supportive of Dani and Zaf's relationship. I think this is one of those books where the chemistry and the vibe and the character development of those main characters was just so A1 that I just ended up really, really loving the book, and she did an excellent job with these characters of this book. And I'm looking forward to finally finishing the trilogy probably sometime this year so I can go ahead and knock that third book out. I actually did get the opportunity to interview Talia Hibbert this year in the summer, and this was for another library system out in the Midwest, and I was able to interview her and talk to her for an hour, and she is just such a pleasant soul, such a sweet person, and I really, really enjoyed the conversation that I was able to have with her. So the next one that I have on this list is not an easy read, especially because of the content, and that is Yellow Wife by Sadiqa Johnson. This is a historical fiction book that is based on the story of Mary Lumpkin, who was a sex slave to the notorious jail owner Robert Lumpkin. And this story is about a slave known by the name of Phoebe. Phoebe is biracial, and she thinks because she is biracial that the slave master will favor her and send her to the north to get an education. But unfortunately, of course, because of the fact that she is a product of I'm going to say a rape between a slave and the slave master's wife was not fond of that. And this is in the beginning, it's a clear indication of the relationship that has often existed between black women and white women, specifically within that time frame in which white women would often take out the issues that they had with the sexual behavior of their husbands on black women. I learned a little bit about that when I read Emma DeBerry's book Twisted, and how that's how hair coverings, when we do head wraps, a lot of that came from an act that was established, I believe, in Louisiana, because white women were intimidated by the beauty of black women, particularly the beauty of their hair, and as a result they were forced to cover up their hair so they wouldn't seem as sexually appealing. And we kind of see that same theme happen in here, where, you know, she ends up taking the brunt of the responsibility for the slave owner's, you know, behavior, and she ends up marrying or becoming a sex slave. And I said this in my review that I use sex slave very intentionally because she's having sex with this man and being with this man as a means to survive. And he is a jail owner, very similar to the original historical story, and she uses her ability to pass as white and her connection to him as a means to survive. And she realizes at the end of the day that she is treated really, truly no better than the slaves that are kept in that jail. And there's a lot of graphic depictions of the slaves that are kept in those jail cells. It is really, really graphic, but it is reality, and it's going to be hard to digest, but it is a story that you don't want to miss. It is very intricately written, it's beautifully written, and the story itself is beautiful because it does show a mother's perseverance to do what she must to survive and to take care of her children. And as a mother myself, I resonated with a lot of why she made the decisions that she made. Not that I would ever have to go through what she went through, but I think that that kind of motherly instinct to, I will do whatever it takes to protect my young, I definitely resonated with that. But this was such an interesting, complex, and beautiful novel, although very, very tough and very, very graphic in a lot of ways. But if you have not thought about picking up Yellow Wife, I would pick it up. But in my review on Goodreads, if you do want to check that out, I do have the content warnings for it, because it's a lot. It's a whole lot of content warnings in this one. The next one that I have on my list is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. I had the pleasure of meeting Namina during Y'all Fest this year, and she signed my book. So happy that I got her to sign this book, and she was very intrigued that I annotated this book. She's very fascinated by it, but she's just a beautiful individual with such beautiful spirit. She smiles, just an infectious type of vibe that she had about her. But The Gilded Ones was one of my most anticipated YA fantasy releases, and it ended up getting pushed back. We finally got the book. I read it and I absolutely adored it. It is another one that I think was very difficult to get past. I did not realize that The Gilded Ones was going to be as graphic as it was, and it is kind of, it was cathartic, I believe, for Namina to write this book, because it deals a little bit with what she experienced growing up as a child when Sierra Leone had its civil wars, and she was processing that trauma. And in writing this book, we do get to see a lot of that. It is a society in which girls are tested to see what color their blood is. If you go to the ceremony and they cut you and your blood is red, you're pure. And if your blood runs gold when they cut you, you're gonna die, essentially. And so our main character goes to this ceremony, and she's cut and her blood does run gold. And then we find out that there's a lot more things that are going on with this book in terms of like what really happens to these girls who have blood that runs gold. Like, where do they go? And we find out that they actually go elsewhere. They're trained to fight for the emperor, but then there's even more complex aspects to who they truly are and the role that they play in this whole world at large. I really, really love this. I will say that when I got about 15% in, I did have to stop because it was just so much going on in terms of like content warnings, and not everything is on page. Some of this stuff is insinuated, but still, it was a lot. I read this the same time that I read Black Buck and Yellow Wife. I read all three of those books in February of last year. Dumb mistake. Like, I'll never make that mistake again, because all three of those books were definitely very intense books. And so I did have to stop this about 50% in. But once I was able to kind of get my bearings right, I was like, okay, I can pick this back up. It's really fast paced. I think I read this over the course of a few days. Probably would have been even shorter had I not taken that break. But I finished the most of the book within a day or so. But it's really good. The female friendships in this are excellent, and the bonds that are formed in this are great. And it does speak to how Black women are treated, and I really, really appreciated that. And I'm glad that Namina had the courage and the strength to be able to share the story with us, especially because it comes from such a deep and personal place. The next one that I have on this list is a single issue comic, and this is Thor, God of Thunder, issue number 6 by Jason Aaron. This is one that I was reading because I was trying to get to a couple of different events that happen in Marvel, and that's like Absolute Carnage, and then, you know, there was this huge event where it was King in Black from Marvel, and to get to that you have to, you know, read certain things and go through 2 events before you get to King in Black. And this is one of the comics that I had to read, and I'm gonna pick back up reading those comics again to get to King in Black so I can finally read that event that happened last year. I'm super behind, but I will get there. It's just a lot of single issues to read, and I picked this one up. I didn't know what to expect. So this is the time in which we see the appearance of the guy that is known for creating these symbiotes or symbiotes. I can't even remember how to say that, which is the thing that attaches itself to Eddie Brock, who is Venom, and the same thing that attached itself to Miles Morales. So this whole creation of this alien type thing starts with this guy, and though you don't know him by name in this issue, he makes his first appearance in Thor God of Thunder issue number 6. Now, outside of that, because the reason why I love this issue has nothing to do with that character, it is Jason Aaron's look at religion. I think it is his perspective and view of religion and how he views religion. It is clear that Jason Aaron through this issue is probably agnostic or atheist, because it focuses on this alien race. They pray to these gods and they suffer. They continue to suffer, and it's this main character and his wife keeps praying to this god or these gods, and she keeps saying the gods will save us, the gods will protect us. And clearly something is just not right. Like, he happens on so much misfortune until literally it is just him left of his family, and you see him struggle so greatly with this whole idea of praying to these gods and believing in this when you still happen upon misfortune. And I think that in the grand scheme of things, you know, I feel like I have a strong faith, but I also am very understanding of people who struggle with the idea of having faith in a higher being when there's so much suffering that people endure, so much suffering that happens around the world. And I understand that. I have a different perspective, but the reason why I enjoy this so much is because of this different perspective. And you can feel Jason Aaron really writing his own, and not just like trying to throw his perspective into it in an angry way, but it just felt so emotional. Like, he struggles with this, and he wrote that into these characters, and I just felt like this is really powerful. This is a 30-page comic, and this man is expressing how much he struggles with the concept of believing in a higher being because of pain and suffering that he probably has experienced in his own life. And you feel the reason why I say it's not like it's angry or it's judgmental for those of us who do believe in a higher being. It's the pain and suffering that you get from the character. You feel the pain that he feels. So in turn, it's like, this is Jason Aaron writing about his own personal pain and struggles with, you know, with believing in a higher being or a higher power. So I loved it. It was so good, y'all. And it's not even a lot of text. It's not text heavy. So the fact that Jason Aaron and with his writing and the art, it just, it was so good. If you haven't read it, I mean, you don't need to read issues 1 through 5. If you just read this as a standalone, you'll get what I mean when I say that this is one of the most powerful comic book issues that I have ever read, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. All right, so the next one that I have on my list is When You Trap a Tiger by Tay Keller. This is a middle grade book, and it is a Newbery winner. If you know anything about Newberys, then you know that they have a tendency to make readers cry. So I shouldn't have been surprised that this one brought tears to my eyes, but it did bring tears to my eyes. And it is one that I just ended up loving so much. It focuses on a character by the name of Lily, and Lily is moving in with her grandmother, her Harmony, with her mom and her sister because she is getting sick. Harmony is getting sick, and they are there to kind of help take care of her because the more sick she gets, the more eccentric that she's getting. And while she's there, Lily ends up meeting a tiger. So this magical tiger comes and tells Lily, hey, there is something that your Harmony took from me that I need back, and I need you to get it for me, and in exchange I'll make your Harmony better. And so as you read the story, you realize that there is a connection between the tiger Harmony and Lily. And when you figure that out, it's really, it's beautiful, it's gut-wrenching, and it is an ode to storytelling. So the author, I believe, is biracial, and she was doing a lot of research into her Korean heritage. And in doing so, you can kind of tell that there were some storytelling aspects that she connected to, which she wrote into the story, and I really appreciated that. And it just made the story just flow so beautifully. Like, it was just a beautiful book, a heart-wrenching book, but the whole concept of it being about familial relationships, because at first glance it looks like a middle grade fantasy, and while it does have fantastical elements like this magical tiger, it really is about familial structures and how we get along with family members, and Lily's connection to her homie, and Lily feeling invisible to her sister and her mother, and how she takes that feeling of invisibility and translates that into how she has friendships at school. It's just, oh, such a work of art. So even if you don't read middle grade, y'all, like, definitely check out When You Trap a Tiger. The next one that I have in this huge bind up is 100,000 Kingdoms, and that's the first book in the Inheritance trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. This was my first N.K. Jemisin book that I've ever read, and it was so good. It was so good. I enjoyed it more than I anticipated. It is about this main character who is kind of an outcast. Her mother passes away, and then she is taken to the Sky City, and in the Sky City she learns that she is to basically be the heiress to the throne. But it's not that simple, because of the fact that it's political intrigue. A lot of people end up wanting the throne. There is the incorporations of god and goddesses, and this is a book that really does take its time. I feel like it's slow burn, and we don't really get to know a lot about the Sky City in this book, which I know is a huge criticism. People are like, well, we don't really know much about Sky City. Like, it just is very much so character driven. Not that there's not plot, but N.K. Jemisin has a very unique way of storytelling, and she takes her time letting readers get to know every single character and the connection that one of our main character ends up having with one of the gods. And it's so beautifully done. They're so oh gosh, they're so complex. It's just nice. It was a great book. I don't know, like, if I didn't expect to like it that much, because I don't read a lot of adult fantasy. So for me to read this and be like, oh my gosh, this was really good, is a huge thing for me, and I can't wait to pick up the second and third book in this trilogy. Next on the list, I have a manga series, and that's Your Lie in April, and this is one that I randomly started reading this year, I think because it was available on KU or Comixology, like one of the two, where they have the entire series. This is volume 6. I haven't read volume 6, but I currently have it checked out from the library, and it is so good. I can tell that it's going to be sad. A lot of people who have told me about Your Lie in April have told me that it is a very, very sad manga series, but it is about this main character who is a pianist, or he used to be a pianist, and basically his mother was like abusive in a lot of ways in training him, and then he ends up quitting when his mother passes away. And then he meets this girl who's a violinist, and she keeps pushing him to get back into playing the piano and get back to where he was, because he was well known in the musical world. He was competitive and he was the talent to beat, but he didn't really feel the music. He was very structured, very just about the method behind it and not the emotion. And the young woman that he ends up meeting, the violinist, very much so is about putting her emotions into her music, and he learns a lot from her. And you can tell that something is just not right, meaning that it's not going to have a happy ending. And I mean, it may have a happy ending, but there's going to be pieces and parts of the story that are going to be really, really sad, and I'm not looking forward to that. But literally, I love this. I am classically trained in piano. A lot of people don't know that, but yeah, I was in middle school and high school, and I was classically trained. I'm a classically trained pianist. I miss it a lot. I don't play as much as I used to play. I need to get back into getting a teacher and getting trained. But I connected with this being a musician and knowing how difficult it is being in the musical world, especially being a piano player, like how intense it can get. And I love that the mangaka of this incorporated like actual piano pieces. So I would actually listen to those piano pieces that I've heard growing up, pieces that I've played before, and would listen to it and read the manga at the same time. And it was just such a cathartic like experience. And I don't think I've given any one of these volumes, like, well, I think I read volumes 1 through 5 all last year. I don't think I gave any of these less than 5 stars. So with that being said, you know that I'm so into this. The next one that I have is another middle grade book, and it is Fighting Words. This is by Kimberly Baker Bradley. This isn't the first book that I've read by this author, and it won't be the last book that I read by this author. She writes some pretty amazing middle grade books. This one focuses on two young women, two young girls, Della and Suki, and they are entering into, at the beginning of the novel, they're entering into foster care because their mother is serving time in prison and they've been abused by their mother's boyfriend. So they end up in foster care and being taken care of by this woman by the name of Francine, and she is an amazing character. A lot of people will say that she's not realistic, but she is a clear indicator of people out here that really want to do the best for kids that just don't have anywhere to go or don't have anybody that they could depend upon. The story itself is told from Della's perspective, and it is about them navigating being in foster care and the relationship that they have with each other. And we get to see a lot of Suki in the book, even though she's not the main character and it's not in her voice. We get to see how much everything impacts her and how much she really takes care of Della and looks after Della and really just is super independent, that she doesn't even want to, you know, depend upon Francine for anything, which I get. She doesn't trust adults anymore because adults have just constantly done her and her sister wrong, but it has some dire consequences, and we get to see those consequences kind of play out. This is definitely not an easy middle grade book. It has some very, very tough themes, but I think that it's material that a middle grade audience can handle and things that they need to see, because it is things that they often experience that people are not willing to talk about. And I really appreciate it that Bradley did not shy away from including those things within the content of this book. It is one of those hard-hitting contemporaries that I always love. Well-written story. I wonder if it's going to be up possibly for Newbery this year. Not sure, but we'll see. The next one that I have on this list is Thick and Other Essays, and this is by Tressie McMillan Kodum, and this is one that me and patrons read sometime this summer. It is a collection of short stories that, not even short stories, it's a collection of essays. I don't know why I said short stories. It is a collection of essays that heavily focus on the Black experience as it pertains to Black women, and it is so good. It is so good. I have never in my life felt so seen. Oh my goodness gracious. And felt like there was an author that was writing these essays that was really truly speaking to my experience. So I think that two of my favorite essays is definitely Black Girlhood Interrupted, which is about the fact of when we think about things like R. Kelly, and we're talking about the Me Too movement and sexual assault and rape, that Black women have a different experience in reporting and really dealing with and healing from their experiences, and how society really doesn't take the same approach to our experiences as they do with other women. The next one that I really, really loved was Dying to Be Competent, and this one focused on basically the intellect of Black women, and that there are aspects of us speaking a certain way, being educated, and it still doesn't matter in society because people are still going to look at us a certain way or judge us just because we're Black women. She talks a little bit about the different risks that are associated with Black women in pregnancy, which I heavily related to. I plan on doing a video about that soon in relationship to a book where I talk about what it was like to be a Black woman and be pregnant and deal with some issues that I had at the hospital because of being a Black woman. For a fact, like I knew that because I had a Black nurse tell me that some things were happening because of that situation. So I definitely recommend this. I can't wait to read this again. It is one that made me think so much about my experience. There were essays in here that I had to read passages over and over because I wanted to make sure that I was absorbing everything that Kodum was trying to say, and it was just a brilliant nonfiction piece. This would not be a favorites list if I did not include at least one Christina C. Jones book. I had to. I've read so many of her works this year, and there definitely was going to be one that I was going to include on this list. So for my selection, I decided to go with Ante Up, and this one is actually one of her darker romances. It definitely is not like her contemporary romances that she typically writes. It takes place in Vegas, and it focuses on two characters, Asha and King, and they are an interesting pair. So they have a one-night stand, they have undeniable chemistry, but the two of them have this extreme level of baggage. Asha's dealing with some sick parents, she's dealing with an abusive ex, and I can't really say what King's dealing with because it's kind of a spoiler, but you can see that the two of them gravitate towards each other, but they don't really give into it because of the baggage and the walls that they have up because of the baggage. So as the queen always does, she writes the story in a way that we slowly watch the walls between these two characters break down, and it's a beautiful thing because she does it in a way that you don't get frustrated. You're not aggravated with the fact that these two characters have so much baggage and it makes them so hesitant to be in a relationship. You don't feel like it's like, oh, just get over it. Like, it is so serious to the extent that you want them to slowly work through it and come to a point where they're healing so that they can trust each other and be in this relationship. And it's so interesting because she creates this parallel between the idea of playing poker and the poker that's played between these two characters when we're talking about their mental connection and their emotional connection, and how each of them tries to wear this poker face when they have this immense feeling for each other and they keep trying to hide it. I think the pacing was brilliant, the writing was brilliant, the characterization was brilliant. She just is such a gifted writer, and I can't say that enough about Christina C. Jones. I've never read an author's works the way that I'm reading her works currently, and literally have just enjoyed pretty much everything that she has put out. Like, I haven't given anything that she's written less than 3 stars, and that says a lot. Like, it says a lot because she has so many books, and you would think, oh, she's putting out these books so fast, there's no way that these books are good, but they're good, and she's so talented, and I will continue to sing of her praises. But I had to put Auntie up on this list because it definitely was one of my favorite books and one of my favorite romances of 2021. Y'all should have known this was going to be on the list. If you did not know that this was going to be on the list, you don't know me, okay? Joker by James Tynion IV. Okay, so we all know that I have this huge thing for James. He's amazing, awesome. James, if you ever see this video, which I highly doubt it, but I absolutely love you and adore you. I think you're an amazing human. This is so good. There was so much hesitancy in the comic book world about Joker coming out because there's not really a standalone Joker series, like a run. Like, there's standalone Joker books, but not a continuous series run of Joker. And people are going to argue with me on this because Joker technically is a Commissioner Gordon book, which it is fully from Commissioner Gordon's perspective. However, Joker's presence is so huge in this book. You feel him seeping through every single page. This man has a twisted and sick type of, I don't even know how to explain it. Just the way that he essentially impacts Gordon, it makes you realize how seeped into the narrative he is, even if it's not from his perspective. And yes, you do get to see Joker on page as a character, even though it's not from his perspective or whatever the case may be. It's just so well written, and the artwork is so good, y'all. The artwork in the series is amazing, and I cannot wait to see what's gonna happen with the series. It basically takes place after what would be Joker War, and there are some things that are going on that are very indicative of Joker, but it may not be Joker doing these things. So there's someone who tells Gordon that they will pay him to get rid of the Joker. It's one and done. We need to get rid of him. So Gordon takes a leap to do this because he pretty much has nothing left to lose, and the story goes from there. If you're gonna read any comics, I need y'all to read Joker. Joker is just, it's so good. It's so good. The next one that I have on this list is The Other History of the DC Universe, and this was written by John Ridley. This is an interesting look at the DC Universe and its non-white superheroes. So comics, as I always say, are white. They're getting better, but traditionally they have been white. So characters, writers, artists, very, very white industry. And we do have black characters, but not in a realistic way. So what John Ridley has done is he's taken the opportunity to highlight these Black characters and really show what they truly would be fighting. And in the first book, which is the one that I have on my favorites list because I haven't read the rest of the books in the series yet, is he focuses on Black Lightning and his origin story and really the things that make him a superhero. And one of the most pivotal moments in this book was when he ends up having this disagreement with Superman, because Superman tries to come into the neighborhood and tell Black Lightning, like, you know, this is how you're supposed to be a superhero. And Black Lightning tells him, how can you come to me and tell me that this is how I'm supposed to be a superhero when you don't even know what's going on in your own backyard, the things that I have to fight on a day-to-day basis that you don't even have to acknowledge. You don't have to think about socioeconomic issues or just social issues in general. And it's true. I think it's very indicative of the fact, as much as I love DC, as much as I love Marvel, and I think about, you know, the Justice League is fighting all of these big cosmos evil individuals, but can't even be so bothered to take care of what they have going on in their own backyard. And Black Lightning was basically calling Superman out on that privilege to be able to be considered a superhero when you don't even take care of what's at home, and how you're an alien and the world welcomes you with open arms. Society welcomes you with open arms, and here you have a black character and the world is like, absolutely not. It's such a fascinating storytelling of the DC universe and how he takes a lot of what we know traditionally to be with DC characters and flips it on its head, and it's absolutely beautiful. And I really cannot wait to read the rest of it. I think that most of these stories now are in one bind up, so I'll be reading the bind up and probably will be reviewing the whole bind up sometime this year. Okay, so the next one is another James Tynion hit. Absolutely love it. I can't really say too much about this because it is the first issue, and this is one of those stories that you have to go into blind because you just don't want to know anything about it, because it'll help with that big bang at the end of this first issue when you really learn what's happening. It is kind of a cataclysmic, end of the world, apocalyptic type of thing, and honestly, that's all I'm gonna say. Trust me when I say James Tynion is like an amazing comic book writer, and I have generally loved like everything that he has put out. So trust me on this and just read this. Just read this comic. You just have to read it. The next one that I have on this list is Wonder Girl issue number 1, and this is by Joelle Jones, who I do really enjoy as a writer. This was so good. This was so good. Okay, so Wonder Girl is introduced and all of this stuff from Future State, yada yada yada. If you, I don't even really want to, I've explained this so much. If you want an explanation, just let me know. But this is Yara Flor. Yara Flor is Wonder Girl, and in this we kind of get an introduction to Yara Flor as Wonder Girl. She goes back to Brazil. It's full of this Brazilian mythology and folklore, and it's so good. The artwork is so good. It's one of the best first issues that I read this past year from DC. It was just, it was beautiful. The artwork was stunningly beautiful, and the story, chef's kiss. I just like Yara Flor as a character. I think that I keep going back to the idea that this whole concept of having Nubia, Yara, and Diana all together as, like, you know, they're Wonder Women. It's so good. It's so good. So, excuse me why I fangirl. I do have to read the rest of the series. There's not really much for me to tell you because this is 30 pages of 30-page comic. So, you know, literally it is her going back to Brazil and getting an introduction to all of this stuff. So, read this. Just read it. Read it. Trust me. Read it. The next ones that I have on my list should be no surprise either. I have Bitterroot volumes 1 through 3. Oh man, I'm not gonna even say much about this because I've talked about this a lot. I just talked about Bitterroot Volume 1 through 3 in my December wrap up, which would have went up a couple days before this video. I have done live shows, well, one live show talking about this, so definitely go check out that live show. I'll link it in the cards above. Part of my comic book club that I'm running with Bree on my channel. Absolutely marvelous, just great. So that's why I decided to include those on this list. They were just really, really good. Next one that I have on this list is Redemptor by Jordan A. Fuego. I can't really say much about this one either because it is the follow-up to Raybearer. What I can say is that it was a beautiful conclusion to the duology. I think that Jordan E. Fuego is one of those debut writers that just has a skill set that is, you know, natural. She just has a very nice way of writing her plot development, her character development, and in this one we really see Terasai delve deeper into who she is as a person, and we see her struggle. I think I like seeing struggles with characters, not because I'm mean, but because I like to see characters change and grow, and she has a lot of growing that she has to do in the second book because Terasai is the type of character where she needs to do everything by herself and she doesn't like to ask for help. And even with her siblings, her Ray siblings, like she just doesn't even want to reach out to them for assistance, and you see how that becomes a detriment in the second book. And she made this deal at the end of the book, which of the first book, which I'm not going to talk about, and that whole decision that she makes at the end of the first book is what this second book is about, and you literally have to watch her figure it out step by step. Probably is one of the most difficult things that she has to do, but I'm glad that she has the opportunity to do it, and I love it, and it was excellent. I enjoy this one more than the first book, which is saying something because usually with conclusions, sometimes they're hit or miss because they're not wrapped up nicely, but she did a heck of a job, and I literally cannot wait to see what else Jordan A. Fuego is going to write. Okay, so the next one that I have on my list is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I picked this up because I had heard so much about it, and usually I am not always into the most popular YA books. I don't typically read a lot of them. Not to say that they're not good, I just don't typically read a lot of them. This is one of the best YA thrillers that I have read. If you do end up reading this one, I will say that you should probably take the opportunity to listen to it on audio because the audio book is so good. It reads just like a podcast. It is about a main character by the name of Pippa who is looking at this case that happened 5 years ago where a young girl went missing and a young man is accused of murdering her, and Pippa doesn't believe that he's the one that did it. So part of her thesis project that she's working on is looking at this case again and trying to figure out exactly what has gone on. And when you figure out exactly what, I didn't see it coming. Like I really didn't see it coming. I'm usually pretty decent at sometimes figuring out what happens in mysteries and thrillers, but this is not one that I saw coming, and it made sense. It was really written well. The plot was laid out very, very well. Everything fell into place. If I was to go back and read it again, I'm sure that I would see how all the dots really did connect. This was a surprise for me. If I had to say one of the most surprising books for me in 2021, it definitely would have to be this one, because I was not expecting to go into this book thinking that it was going to be something that was brilliant and marvelous and like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to finish the trilogy, because I definitely just got the third one in audio and I'm probably going to start listening to it as soon as I finish my current audiobook. But I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did end up enjoying it, and it was shocking to enjoy it as much as I did. It was just, y'all, it's so good. Oh my goodness gracious. If you have not picked up this trilogy, this is the one time that I'm saying like the hype matches the quality, okay? Like it's worth all the hype that it's getting. It is so good. And I probably will have the third one on my favorite books of 2022, although there seems to be some mixed reviews about that one, but that's okay. I'm holding out hope because the first and the second book were absolutely chef's kiss. The next one that I have on this list is Midnight in Washington, and this is Adam Schiff's book on what happened during the impeachment trial of Donald Trump. And not just the impeachment trial, like he literally talks about his own life. He talks about the events leading up to the impeachment trial, what happens after, up into the insurrection that happened on January 6th of 2021. And this is a huge chunk of a book. It's over 500 pages. I listened to Adam Schiff narrate it over the course of 2 days, and it was beautifully done. I have just never read a nonfiction political book. I've been reading a lot of those lately, if you haven't noticed, but I haven't read one where I just felt so in tune with what the author was saying. Like, Bob Woodward's books are good. I've enjoyed everything that he's done in his Trump trilogy, but this book, when you find out the details of the impeachment trials, because I know that we were following along, but a lot of times, you know, you're going about and you're living your life, and it was just a time in which, you know, the news, like, you just didn't want to watch the news. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like, it was just not, for me personally, me and my family, like, watching the news was not high on our priority, because it just became really depressing and really traumatic just to see exactly what was happening in the world. You just wanted to get away. And I know that, you know, I definitely was watching some parts of the impeachment trials and what was going on with, you know, after the impeachment trials, but there are details that I definitely missed because I wasn't as in tune. There was lots of things that I did not have a grasp on because I was not in tune. And I know the impeachment trials took place before the pandemic. I just want to make that clear because I was thinking about the way that I said that. But like the things that they talk about, I think that 2018, 2020 just were not big news heavy years for me, because I just got sick of hearing Trump's foolishness. I got sick of hearing about the Russian collusion. But when you really dive deep into the particulars of what happened during the trial and how people were impacted, how people lost their jobs, how there was a guy who was willing to testify against the president, and he was in the military. He got blackballed and eventually had to leave the military because he wasn't going to get the advancements, the career advancements that were promised to him, because he decided to do the right thing. It's heartbreaking, and it's sad, and it's powerful. And, you know, I didn't even realize that Adam Schiff, still to this day in 2022, does not know who the whistleblower was for the impeachment trials. Like, he intentionally did that so that he wouldn't accidentally blow their cover or give any sign or indication of anything about them that people couldn't put pieces of the puzzle together. And it just made me respect him so much more. He gave some insight to how politics work, like how he was sitting on a plane with another politician and they were talking about something, and literally as soon as they got off the plane, not an hour or two later, this politician had twisted the words that he had said and tried to make Adam Schiff look like something that he wasn't. Adam said that he approached him when they were on the House floor, and basically he was like, you know, why would you say something like that? And he was like, hey, you know how politics work. And it's like, you know, stuff like that happens, but it's so sick that people like in positions of power are that evil. They're just evil, and it's sickening. But it's crazy that you get to see all of this in the context of this book. It was so well written. I literally want a copy so I can read it again and annotate it, and I probably will do that sometime this year. But oh gosh, it was one of my favorite political nonfiction books that I read in 2021. So good. So if you ever get the chance to read Adam Schiff's book, I highly recommend it. The next one that I have on this list is A Bad Fat Black Girl, and this is a book that I've talked a lot about in my personal and professional life. It is a look at trap feminism, and it's so good, y'all. I don't even know how to put it into words. This book was not written for me. This book is not about my personal experience, but I appreciated it because while we're talking about feminism, we always say that particularly Black women, Black femmes, Black trans women are often left out of the conversation. And this author goes even further to say that, you know, people, Black women particularly, who grow up in not just like in the hood, we're talking about like trap house types, you know, situation. Even they are further left out of the conversation. And what I appreciated about this book is that she was unapologetically Black. She didn't code herself for the comfort of white people. She said it like she wanted to say it. She was not trying to write for their personal advantage. It was about being black, blackity black, 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 all the way. And I appreciated that. There was no code switching, no nothing like that. And I think that there was an editor who had an issue with that, and she said, I'm not writing so that other people feel comfortable. I'm writing my truth. And that was very, very important for me, because while I did not necessarily grow up in the same environment as this author, while trap feminism in all ways is not 100% applicable to me, I can appreciate the fact that this was written for women who do not have to go through self-actualization. I had to go through self-actualization, and while I think there's nothing wrong with that, we often leave out black women who don't have to go through the process of realizing that they're black and it's okay to be black. They don't grow up in, predominantly white spaces. Like that's not the environment that they grow up in, and we often leave them out of the discussion because we're so hyper focused on self-actualization and black people who have to navigate predominantly white spaces. But what about those black people who don't have to do that, who grow up secure in their blackness? You know what I'm saying? So it's such a different experience. It's one that I love. It's one that I want a physical copy of so I can go ahead and annotate it and read it again. And she uses a lot of trap songs as kind of like her outline for the book. And it's music that I'm familiar with. Like, I grew up listening to trap music. I listen to trap music occasionally now, not as much. Just not 100% my thing as much. If I'm going out, yes, but I don't like sit at home and be like, I'm gonna turn on some trap music. But a lot of music that she does talk about is trap music, like that I grew up on, or like especially when I was in college, like Knuck If You Buck. Like, that's just stuff that I'm like really, really familiar with. So there were points of connection for me, but I could appreciate that this book was written for black women who are not me. And I love that this book was an ode to them. And I appreciated that. And I appreciate that she took the time to do that, because we don't have a lot of that. So if you haven't read Bad Fat Black Girl, this is, about trap feminism, you need to pick this one up too. And the last one on my list is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is, I don't know what number this is for me when we're talking about Tiffany D. Jackson books. This is the 4th or 5th book that I've read by Tiffany D. Jackson. Maybe even more than that. Maybe this is the 6th book I've read by her, because I'm also counting books that she's done with other people. And I think that this is the 6th book. It's either the 5th or 6th book, I can't remember. And I love her. I love her. I also, when I went to Y'all Fest, I got her to sign this. She also too, like Namina, was very like, oh my gosh, the annotations, they're beautiful. So I also got her, to appreciate the annotating thing, which I absolutely love. So basically, Monday's Not Coming is about a young black girl who notices that her best friend Monday is missing, and nobody seems to notice that she's missing. And she can't understand or process why no one is concerned, or why no one cares that this girl has not come back to school. She has not come back from summer break, and no one is invested in the fact that she has not come back yet. And it stresses her out. And basically, that's all I can tell you about this book, because the way that it unfolds is so heartbreaking when you figure out why things happen the way that they happen. Oh my goodness gracious. I mean, I knew that this was going to be a tough read, because Tiffany D. Jackson often does not write books that are not difficult to process. However, this one was tough in a different way, because she was inspired, I think, by young black women and girls that had gone missing in the DC area. It's DC or Philadelphia, one of the two cities. She took inspiration from that. And it is something that still happens to this day. The effort that is put into young black girls going missing as opposed to other people, particularly young white girls, is completely different. I've seen that firsthand in my city, and it's sad. It's sad that they don't put that much effort into it, because when we go missing, people don't care as much. There's not as much effort. It's like, who really gives a damn? It's a black girl gone missing. We don't care, because we don't care about young black girls. They're not important to us. And I'm trying not to get emotional about it, because it was a very close incident that happened in my city, and this book was just very reminiscent of the lack of effort that went into finding the young girl that went missing in my city. And it's she captures all of that emotion in this book. And as you can see, I have a lot of annotations. This is a book also that plays a little bit with time. So I would keep that in mind when reading that. Time is a very important factor in this book, and time is the thing that bridges the entire story together. But I'm not surprised that I really enjoyed it. I love Tiffany D. Jackson as just a writer, as a person, and I can't wait to finish her entire backlist, which I don't have a lot of hers to finish. I know she has a new one, I believe that's coming out this year, but I think I'm going to do a reread of Grown, and then I have Allegedly to read and her picture book, and I think I'm done. So, and then Let Me Hear a Rhyme. So that's it. And then I will be finished with my Tiffany D. Jackson's books, and I may do an author deep dive of her works. All right, y'all. So those are my favorite books, or my top books of 2021. Let me know in the comment box below which your top books of 2021 were. I'm looking forward to seeing them. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content, make sure you click the subscribe button. If you want to support this channel, follow me on social media. All the links will be down in the description box below, and I'll be back with another video soon.